D.C., where the city's mayor, Muriel Bowser, says President Trump's federal law enforcement surge has led to a drop in crime in the city, but is criticizing the presence of immigration agents and National Guard troops. Take a listen.
We greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city. We know that when carjackings go down, when the use of gun goes down, when homicide or robbery go down, neighborhoods feel safer and are safer. So this surge has been important to us for that reason. What we know is not working is a break in trust between police and community, especially with new federal partners in our community. We know having masked ICE agents in the community has not worked, and National Guards from other states has not been an efficient use of those resources.
Joining the conversation, we have managing editor at The Bulwark, Sam Stein, and staff writer at The Atlantic, Mark Leibovich. Good to have you both on.
Mark, you wrote a book called This Town. Let's talk about this town right now.
What a town it is.
I find the town's mayor is very pragmatic, understands who she's dealing with, and in her partnership with President Trump has continued to have polite conversations with the president, despite the fact many of her constituents would like her to take a much tougher stance there. But there she said, hey, thanks so much, Mr. President. Crime is down. Carjackings are down. At the same time, your forces are being really disruptive, wearing masks and the National Guard, other things that are being done. Talk about how she's sorting through this and what difference Washington residents are seeing.
Well, first of all, the key phrase there is she knows who she's dealing with, because she obviously does, and she knows that the person she's dealing with is audience of one, Donald Trump, is going to pay very close attention, especially to the first part of her statement. And he is going to reap, I think, a great deal of political benefit from the mayor of Washington, D.C., essentially endorsing his, this move in the last few weeks, which has been very, very controversial. It hasn't really made a marked difference in the day-to-day of the community, but certainly people are aware of it. And the second part of her statement about the ICE agents, I imagine most people, at least in the White House, are going to ignore, because that's not what they're interested in talking to her about. In the day-to-day life of Washington, though, I mean, yeah, it's a little bit, it's jarring. It's been jarring at first. There's not a great deal of disruption that you see sort of as you're going to work and coming back from work and so forth. But you're clearly aware of it. And I do think that the mayor is being somewhat politically savvy here, knowing that she is, going to have to deal with President Trump, and he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
And on top of that, I would just add, President Trump has $2 billion worth of money that he wants to send to the city for beautification. Yeah. And if you're a mayor worth your salt, you're going to say, hey, can I have that money? I need that money. So I do think she's being pragmatic. I will say, I mean, look, if you add law enforcement officials, federal or local, whatever, if you up them to the degree that they have in the city, you will get a reduction in crime. That seems logical. It makes sense. I think she's trying to walk a tightrope by saying get rid of the people wearing masks, saying the National Guard probably are not doing the most efficient use of their time when they're doing custodial work. And I think if we were in a pragmatic situation, you could probably find some sort of middle ground here in which they would unleash the $1 billion that they had withheld from the city's budget, give it back to the city, in which they would up the budget for the National Park Service, which they gutted in DOGE, and in which they would up the federal law enforcement footprint in the city while making those pragmatic changes that she talks about. Problem is, we don't live in that type of system. And what I would say, just to add on what Mark said, is if you walk around the city, if you talk to people in the city, yeah, it's not as obtrusive as you might imagine. But what it is, it does seem very much targeting undocumented workers in the city. And throughout the city, you see a lot of people being targeted because of suspicions that they're here illegally. And so this is almost taking the form of a anti-undocumented immigrant operation as opposed to an anti-crime operation.
Right, about ICE and not about crime. So the thing is also, the sooner the president can declare victory, say mission accomplished, I'm sure the mayor understands the sooner a lot of these troops are going to be leaving. That may also be one of the reasons she's saying what she's saying.
Maybe. And now this. A grand jury in Washington, D.C. rejected a felony charge against a man who threw a sandwich at a federal agent earlier this month. That's according to the New York Times. The paper notes it's extremely unusual for prosecutors to come out of a grand jury without obtaining an indictment because they are in control of the information grand jurors receive about a case, and defendants are not allowed to have their lawyers in the room as evidence is presented. The Times also highlights that the rejection by the grand jurors was particularly noteworthy given the attention paid to the case by the Trump administration, including posting video on social media
Of the ham sandwich.
of a large group of heavily armed law enforcement officers going to the man's apartment.
For the ham sandwich. Yeah,
I believe it was salami, Joe.
Salami, well, the old saying is that, it's so easy to get an indictment from a grand jury, you can even indict a ham sandwich, but you cannot obviously indict a Subway salami sandwich.
It's hard to not get, as you know, being a former attorney, hard not to secure an indictment
right
in a case like this, but they found a way to do it there. So, Lebo, this is kind of the latest example of judges, grand jurors in the district where you live, pushing back a bit on the Trump administration's takeover, resulting in people being charged with federal crimes for things that typically should be and would be handled at the local court level. Washington Post reporting a D.C. grand jury on 3 separate occasions this month refused to indict a D.C. woman accused of assaulting an FBI agent. A few days later, a federal judge said an arrest of a man at a grocery store in Northwest Washington was preceded by, quote, the most illegal search I've seen in my life. That same judge described
warriors.
Another arrest as lacking basic human dignity. Earlier this week, prosecutors reduced the charges against the woman accused of assaulting an FBI agent to a misdemeanor. The prosecutor's office also dropped the charges against the man arrested at the grocery store. So, long story short here, too heavy-handed for those federal judges.
Yeah, I mean, also, by the way, in everyone's rush to use the "you can indict a ham sandwich" cliche yesterday, people did lose sight of the fact that it was salami. So we can't reiterate that enough. And we're all about facts.
Ever
here.
the journalist.
Ever the journalist. Yeah. Clearly, what's happening here is, look, judges have, I think, pretty consistently, not just in D.C. but across the country, been a pretty consistent bulwark against some of what is perceived as overreach by the executive branch here. And, certainly in D.C., but you also get a sense that some of these judges are really having a kind of a strangely good time with some of their rhetoric here and sort of batting down what is being put before them in their courtroom, almost as if they're relishing the chance to actually get, their 2 cents worth in here. It's unclear if this will continue. I mean, I think it will. I think obviously, the president has put a great deal of pressure on the judiciary, as he has against much of the government. But I do think that it does seem to be holding in this case. And obviously, it's very fragile, it's a very precarious situation. But it does seem to be happening, quite often, it seems.
Sam, your thoughts on the salami sandwich? What is the difference between the salami sandwich hitting a federal agent and a ham sandwich? And what makes perhaps the ham sandwich a felony, the salami sandwich a misdemeanor at best?
There's so many unanswered questions here. Was it a $5 footlong? Was it 6 inches? What kind of condiments were on it? That could have changed the sentencing here. So we just don't know. I think what's clear, I agree with Mark that there does seem, I'm going to use the word relish, but they are trying to relish, the judges are trying to relish in rebuking the administration. I didn't use it intentionally.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
I did. You're right. But the truth of the matter is that the charges being brought against these people are way overstated, right? I mean, these would be misdemeanor charges in normal circumstances. The administration is trying to make a point. They should be rebuked. And again, if you were a rational human being trying to tamp down crime, you wouldn't be throwing the books at the sandwich thrower. You'd be going into neighborhoods where actual crime was committed. And that's not actually taking place here. I go back to this. To me, at least a couple weeks into this seems more about creating a spectacle and also about going at undocumented workers. If it was about crime, they would do things differently, not just in terms of where they're deploying people, but in terms of the charges they're bringing against people.
Managing editor at The Bulwark, Sam Stein, and staff writer at The Atlantic, Mark Leibovich. Thank you both very much for coming
They've
on
cleared
this
that out.
morning.
Yeah,
Okay,
I feel better about it.
I feel much better about